Uncrewed or unmanned spacecraft are spacecraft without people on board, used for robotic spaceflight. Uncrewed spacecraft may have varying levels of autonomy from human input, they may be remote-controlled, remote-guided or even autonomous, meaning they have a pre-programmed list of operations, which they will execute unless otherwise instructed. Many habitable spacecraft also have varying levels of robotic features. For example, the space stations Salyut 7 and Mir, and the ISS module Zarya were capable of remote-guided station keeping, and docking maneuvers with both resupply craft and new modules. The most common uncrewed spacecraft categories are robotic spacecraft, uncrewed resupply spacecraft, space probes and space observatories. Not every uncrewed spacecraft is a robotic spacecraft, for example, a reflector ball is a non-robotic uncrewed spacecraft. Examples. For a more detailed list, see List of Solar System probes. Selected lunar probes. Luna program, USSR Lunar Exploration, 1959 to 1976. Ranger program, U.S. Lunar Hard Landing Probes, 1961 to 1965. Zond program, USSR Lunar Exploration, 1964 to 1970. Surveyor program, U.S. Lunar Soft Landing Probe, 1966 to 1968. Lunar Orbiter program, U.S. Lunar Orbital, 1966–1967. Lunokhod program, USSR Lunar Rover Probes, 1970 to 1973. Museza, Hiton and Hagoromo, Japanese Lunar Orbital and Hard Landing Probes, 1990 to 1993. Clementine, U.S. Lunar Orbital, 1998. Lunar Prospector, U.S. Lunar Orbital, 1998–1999. Smart 1, European Lunar Orbital, 2003. Selene, Japanese Lunar Orbiter, 2007. Chang'e 1, Chinese Lunar Orbiter, 2007. Chandrayaan 1, Indian Lunar Orbiter, 2008. Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, U.S. Lunar Orbiter, 2009. LCROSS, U.S. Lunar Hard Landing Probe, 2009. Chang'e 2, Chinese Lunar Orbiter, 2010. Gravity Recovery and Interior Laboratory, U.S. Lunar Orbiters, 2011. Mars probes. Zond program, failed USSR flyby probe. Mars probe program, USSR orbiters and landers. Viking program, 2 NASA orbiters and landers, 1974. Phobos program, failed USSR orbiters and Phobos landers. Mars Pathfinder, NASA lander and rover, 1997. Mars Surveyor, 98 program, Mars Climate Orbiter and Mars Polar Lander, failed NASA probes. Mars Global Surveyor, NASA Orbiter. Mars Odyssey, NASA orbiter, reached Mars on October 24, 2001. Mars Observer — failed NASA Mars orbiter. Mars Express orbiter and Beagle 2 — European orbiter and failed lander 2003. Mars Exploration Rovers — NASA rovers 2004. Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter — NASA orbiter, entered Martian orbit March 10, 2006. Phoenix — NASA lander, landed May 25, 2008. Mars Science Laboratory — NASA rover, launched November 26, 2011. Mars Orbiter Mission — Indian orbiter launched by ISRO on 5 November 2013. Venus probes. Venera program — USSR Venus orbiter and lander 1961 to 1984. Pioneer Venus project — U.S. Venus orbiter and entry probes 1978. Vega program — USSR mission to Venus and comet Halley 1984. Magellan probe — U.S. Venus orbiter 1989. Venus Express — ESA probe sent for the observation of the Venus's weather 2005. Topic: Gas giant probes. Pioneer program — U.S. Jupiter and Saturn flybys. Voyager program — U.S. Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus and Neptune flyby and study of interstellar medium. Galileo probe — U.S. Jupiter orbiter and atmosphere probe ended 2003. Cassini-Huygens — U.S. European Saturn orbiter and Titan lander Huygens 1997 to 2017. Juno — U.S. Jupiter orbiter 2011 present. Topic: Comet and asteroid probes. International Cometary Explorer passed through gas tail of Comet 21P, Giacobini-Zinner 1985, Giotto, European, flyby of Comet 1P, Halley 1986, Vega 1 and 2, USSR, flyby of Comet 1P, Halley 1986, Sakigake, Japanese, flyby of Comet 1P, Halley 1986, Susei, Japanese, flyby of Comet 1P, Halley 1986, near Shoemaker, U.S., asteroid 433 Eros orbiter, which later landed on the asteroid's surface, launched 1996 Deep Space 1, U.S., Comet 19P, Borrelly and asteroid flyby, 1998 to 2000 Stardust, U.S., Comet 81P, Wild flyby and sample return, launched 1999, flew by 2004, returned January 15, 2006 Contour, U.S., Comet flyby mission, comets 2P, 73P and 6P, lost due to solid rocket motor failure shortly after launch in 2002. Hayabusa, Japanese, asteroid rendezvous, lander and sample return, launched 2003, returned June 13, 2010. Rosetta, European, Comet 67P, Churyumov-Gerasimenko orbiter and lander Philae, launched 2004. Deep Impact, successful U.S. Comet 9P, Temple impactor, launched 2005 Deep Impact, Epoxy, U.S., Comet 103P, Hartley Flyby Extended Deep Impact Mission, 2010 Stardust, Next, U.S., Comet 9P, Temple Flyby Extended Stardust Mission, 2011 Dawn, U.S. launched on September 27, 2007, orbited Vesta in 2011, and currently orbiting Ceres since 2015. Topic: Solar observation probes. Ulysses Solar Particles and Fields ended 2009. Genesis First Solar Wind Sample Return Mission, 2001–2004 crash. Interstellar Boundary Explorer (IBEX), launched October 19, 2008. Advanced Composition Explorer, Solar Particles and Fields Observation at Earth-Sun L1 point. Stereo pair of probes in solar orbits providing 3D observations of Sun. SOHO Solar and Heliospheric Observatory, observer for Sun's corona and core located at L1 point. Topic: Other solar system probes. Zond program, USSR flyby missions to the Moon, Venus, and Mars. Mariner program, U.S. Mercury, Venus and Mars flybys. Messenger, U.S. Mercury orbiter, launched 2004. New Horizons, U.S. launched on January 19, 2006. First probe to visit Pluto, successful flyby on 14 July 2015. Topic: Technology demonstrators. OREX orbital reentry experiment, Japanese atmospheric reentry and heat shield demonstrator, successfully flown in February 1994. Atmospheric reentry demonstrator (ARD), European atmospheric reentry and heat shield demonstrator, successfully flown in October 1998. HyFlex hypersonic flight experiment, Japanese uncrewed spaceplane atmospheric reentry demonstrator, successfully flown in February 1996. Intermediate Experimental Vehicle (IXV), European uncrewed spaceplane atmospheric reentry demonstrator, successfully flown in February 2015. Topic: Uncrewed resupply spacecraft. Topic: See also. List of unmanned spacecraft by program. List of passive satellites.